I have got to stop eating meals while watching horror films. Hey guys, Melinda here. So welcome to the next horror movie review video. This is the first week that I'm doing 7 movie reviews versus last week. If you haven't seen it, I started off by just doing 2. I reviewed Poltergeist and Poltergeist 2 The Other Side. So make sure to go check out that video as well because I am going to be talking about Poltergeist 3 in this video. Today I am beginning the 7 movie stretch for the rest of the month. I'm going to be watching a different horror movie every single day for the month of October and reviewing them all here. For those of you who have not noticed before, I do have a little board right here that I always put the title of the movie that I am talking about. I didn't have enough letters for all the movies, so I just kind of shortened it just to kind of give you an idea. And I will be talking about each and every single one of the films. I will just be going very briefly though because I am going to be talking about multiple films and I don't want to drag this video on for 7 years. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into the movie reviews. Today I am going to be talking about The Green Inferno, House of a Thousand Corpses, The Autopsy of Jane Doe, Poltergeist 3, The Invisible Man, The Strangers 2, Pray at Night, and Ready or Not. First, I'm going to talk about The Green Inferno. This came out several years ago, and I remember seeing the trailer for it and thinking that it was going to be so creepy and eerie. It is directed by Eli Roth, who did Cabin Fever. He is very well known for gore. That's kind of pretty much what I expected going into this film. This film is about this group of college students that fly to the Amazon forest to basically protest and try and save it. On their way home, their plane crashes and they get kidnapped by the actual Amazonian tribe. They like torture them and do really horrible things to them. That's pretty much the gist of this film, and that is definitely where the gore comes in. So the torturing part of them, a lot of limbs get cut off and a lot of flesh gets taken off, and it's just so absolutely disgusting. I was eating lunch while watching this film and almost couldn't finish because it was just so gross. Pretty much the gore of this film is all it has going for it. The story, the characters, and the dialogue were all incredibly weak. There like hardly was a story to it at all. As you're watching, you learn that these group of kids that are going to protest, they're doing it all for the wrong reasons. It makes me kind of hate them as I'm watching it, and I'm almost kind of rooting for the Amazonian tribe that's torturing them. I had no sympathy for these characters whatsoever, which I think is not a good thing to have, especially in a horror film. You want to root for somebody, and you just couldn't do that with these characters because they were all awful. There were a lot of over-dramatized moments that had me eye-rolling like the entire film. The use of the music throughout this film was just not a good choice. Sometimes it felt misplaced and it felt strange and unnecessary, so I just thought the use of the music was very extra at some points, and the music choice just did not fit with the flow and the environment of what was happening within the story right then and there. So that's pretty much just all of my notes kind of just generate all of that. The characters were awful. I did not have any sympathy whatsoever for them, and I think that is something that should have changed about this film. I want to give this film the 3 G's: gross, gore, and gruesome. And that's all that this film had. So we're gonna move on to our next one. So the next film I'm gonna be talking about is House of a Thousand Corpses. I have heard of this title throughout several years and just for some odd reason never watched it. It is written, directed, and co-scored by Rob Zombie. So I didn't have high expectations for it because if you guys don't know, Rob Zombie is a musician, hard rock, heavy metal kind of music, so I wasn't expecting like a really thought out plot and premise of this film, and that is pretty much exactly what I got. You can tell that this film was very low budget. The camera work felt very amateur to me. I don't know if this was a specific choice or again because I know it's low budget. The camera work just wasn't that good. This film was classified as a black comedy, which is also known as a dark comedy. I know I've thrown that term out there a lot. It's a horror movie, but it's also supposed to be comedic. This film just wasn't my kind of humor, so I didn't really find it funny. I know in particular I tend to laugh at horror movies, and I didn't really laugh once during this film. I was more distracted distracted by everything else going on, which ties into my next point, and that's there were these weird transitional shots that put like a really weird filter over the scene, just kind of didn't really tie in with the story itself. Those transitional scenes, especially with the music that was over it, and the filters were very distracting, and it really took me out of the film, and I lost interest basically. That is definitely one thing that I think should be taken out. I thought this was an extremely weird movie, especially towards the end. I thought the ending was kind of random. To me, it felt like that Rob Zombie just wanted to throw like the scariest ideas out into this film without an explanation. By now, you probably all know that I am big on explanations. I want to know the how and the why. I got none of that in this film. It was just all kind of thrown at you. That really bummed me out about this film, but again, I didn't have high expectations for it, so I can't be too disappointed in it. Just like Green Inferno, this film was very gruesome and brutal. I don't recommend watching while eating a meal, which I also did. Again. Yeah, let's move on to the next film. I forgot to mention this. Green Inferno and House of a Thousand Corpses is free on Netflix, so you can go watch that. The next film I'm talking about is The Autopsy of Jane Doe. I actually really liked this film. I have been seeing on Netflix for so many years. Every time I scroll through the horror movie section, it's always there, and it's always caught my eye. I just never watched it until now. It was a very intriguing story. It was about this body comes into a morgue. The people that do the autopsy on the body are trying to figure out the cause of death. The outside of this body was so pristine, there was no indication of how this person could have died. But when they start opening up the body and looking on the inside, it's a mess. It's a wreck. You go this whole film like trying to figure out what could have happened to her, and then a supernatural force comes out of nowhere. I was very excited about that. I didn't think that this was gonna be a supernatural film. I thought it was just gonna be kind of like a mystery kind of film. It was really good. It really caught me off guard. It had my attention the entire time. Very mysterious, very eerie and creepy. It was very suspenseful and intense. It was just really good. It was really well done. There are a few jump scares. Most of the jump scares are very predictable. You can see it coming, but there were a couple that I wasn't expecting, so that is what got me. The people that are doing the autopsy, it's a father and a son. They're a team that works together, and they gave the son a side story, which I felt was unnecessary. Like, it didn't really add anything to the film. You didn't need it in there. The only thing it did was kind of make me hate him in the end. I think that you could have still had this film be as great as it was and take out that side story. Like, you just did not need it whatsoever. This film does get a little bit gross, in particular when they are opening up this corpse, looking at all of the organs and everything inside, and I was eating my lunch while watching this and was absolutely disgusted by it. Do not watch this while eating a meal. That's pretty much the theme of this video. Don't watch any of these movies when you're eating. The ending was a little bit predictable, but it was very interesting how they portrayed it. I knew what was gonna happen, but I didn't know how we were gonna get there, basically. So I thought that was very interesting. That is pretty much the gist of this film. I do recommend this one. This was one of my favorites so far. Moving on to my next film, Poltergeist 3. This is streaming free on Amazon Prime if you do have this. If you haven't seen my other movie review, go check that out. I talk about the first and the second film. I really don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because this movie was terrible. It was worse than the second film. I didn't think that was possible, but yet it was. Basically, the little girl, Carol Ann, she is living with her aunt and her uncle. She was like supposed to be there for the summer and something happened, so she couldn't go home, and the poltergeist basically comes back and torments her again. That's the biggest thing that I absolutely hated about this film, is the fact that it's not even the family anymore. Carol Ann is with this new family. She's with her aunt and her uncle. We don't know any of these characters, which made me so sad because I love the family. I love their dynamic, and that's just one thing that I felt ruined this film, was the fact that they had to introduce these new characters, this new story. Bottom line, hated all of the characters, hated the story. I know that they wanted to keep this franchise going, but they didn't know where to go with it. They thought that if they brought the family back that they couldn't tell a story with it. I could tell that they struggled with it in the second film. So they thought maybe introducing these new characters, this new story, could keep it going. I have no idea how well it did, but I can just tell you it was terrible. It was a terrible film. The story just wasn't very compelling. It couldn't keep my attention. It really did try to be scary and creepy and eerie, and it failed. I did want to point out though, there is a moment when Carolyn says that she does miss her mom, her dad, and her brother, but not her sister. Her sister yet is not mentioned whatsoever in this film. So I just thought that was very interesting. I put that the ending was very annoying and frustrating, and this entire film was cheesy and unrealistic. And that is pretty much all I'm gonna say, because if I go into any more specifics, I know I'm gonna get very angry with this film, so we are gonna move on. The next film I watched was The Invisible Man, which came out this year. It was by Blumhouse, which is my favorite horror production company. I was very excited about this film, and I was not disappointed. This is definitely my favorite that I've seen so far of all the films. This film is free on HBO. Absolutely recommend this film. It is worth it. It is a great film. I know that this is a reboot, and I probably plan on watching the original during the series as well, but this I thought was a really great film. What it's about, this woman, she is in a very toxic relationship and she escapes it and is terrified that her boyfriend is gonna come hunt her down and torment her, and he somehow figures out a way to be invisible, and he comes and he does that. It was a very intriguing, suspenseful, and mysterious movie the entire time. I was in love with the cinematography. They would do a lot of camera pans and a lot of these wide shots. Whenever they had those moments, I'm immediately looking around the entire scene just trying to see if something is gonna move, if we're gonna see something, which is great because then it really captures my attention and I'm trying to figure out what's gonna happen, because why else would they be showing these kind of shots? So I loved that I was able to participate basically in trying to figure out what is supposed to be happening and what I'm supposed to be looking at. It was very intense. I got very anxious and uncomfortable while watching this. It made me very anxious watching it because I don't know what to expect. I don't know what's gonna happen. There was a point when she had proof that he was invisible, but she didn't try to show anybody. I just don't understand why. I know it's a film that's supposed to be dramatic. There were some shocking moments that made my jaw drop. It's a very sick, twisted, and demented story, and I was just in love with it the entire time. The way that they ended it, they kind of left it open for interpretation. I did have some questions about it, but it ties in with the ending and the open interpretation that it's leaving. That itself is a very good thing because then anybody can think of what the ending could mean. I thought it was a great job. This was a really great concept. It was done very well and definitely my favorite film so far. Moving on to my next film, The Strangers Prey at Night. So this was the sequel to The Strangers that actually came out 10 years prior. I love the original. I thought it was such a great idea and such a scary idea, especially because it said it was inspired by true events. Just the idea of somebody breaking into your house and tormenting you. The second one, The Strangers Prey at Night, just wasn't that good. This movie is streaming free on Amazon Prime. It's about this family. They're taking a little road trip to drop their daughter off at boarding school. They stop by their uncle's trailer park and they were gonna stay there for the night. The strangers, the people in these masks, is waiting for them to play with them and kill them basically. I didn't like this film. It was a disappointment and it was a letdown, especially how good I thought the first film was. They really tried hard to create a story for the family and to create sympathy within these characters, and I thought it was just poorly executed. I didn't really have sympathy for them. I really had an issue with this film because the strangers show up, they kill the uncle and his wife, and the next day is when this family shows up. The strangers are still there. So my question is how did they know that the family was coming, and why did they wait for them? That is just one thing that bothered me about this film. It had such a different feeling and vibe from the first film, which immediately is what made me think that this wasn't going to be a good film because it was I could just tell that it was so different. It was very predictable. I thought the characters were very unrealistic. I wrote that the ending was dumb because they tried to leave it open-ended, which I just thought was stupid. I thought they should have just ended it. Hopefully they don't try to continue with this franchise. That's pretty much all I have to talk about this film. They really tried hard to create a story, to create sympathy, make it more dramatic within this family, but it just was poorly executed. It wasn't done well, and I don't understand how the strangers could have known that they were coming. Yeah, we're gonna move on to the next one. The last film I'm gonna be talking about is Ready or Not, which is streaming for free on HBO. My first impression was that this movie looked dumb and cheesy, so I was turned off by it. It was interesting. I have a lot of notes about it that I want to go into, but I think I'm just quickly go over all of it. So the film starts, has a story, and then it says 30 years later, and then the story continues basically. I thought 30 years was a big jump. I thought that it should have been smaller. I would have believed 20 years more than 30 years. It just seems like a very long time, and I just could not stop thinking about that gap. This film is basically about this girl marries into this family, and to be initiated, basically, she has to play a game with them because their family became wealthy on creating games. She has a deck of cards, she pulls one out, and the one she got was hide and seek. So she has to go hide, the family has to seek her, but yet they're trying to kill her. And that's kind of what the whole film is about, is just following her throughout the night, trying to survive and avoid the family members. The backstory that they gave the bride was very predictable. I knew exactly where they were going with it before she explained it. I guess I just hated that part of it. It was easy writing is what I would say. So I was very interested what would happen if she pulled any of the other cards. We do learn the others are just normal games, so like chess, checkers, Old Maid. This is the only card that you have to kill somebody. My question is, why is this the only one, you know? I know it's for the story, but I want that explanation. Again, big on the explanation. I thought it was a weird but interesting concept. I wrote that it's a flawed concept though, like I just kept poking holes in it the entire film, and I couldn't focus on it because I kept doing that. One question I had is that obviously when you marry into this family and you play a game, there are the regular ones, so there's chess, checkers, etc. How could the outside family members, the ones that married into this family, be okay with the idea of having to go kill this woman? It's been 30 years, so none of them have had to do this before. That's why, again, I thought it was a very big time gap. I thought it should have been smaller, or at least that this could happen more regularly. I'm just wondering how they can be okay with this. I guess you can consider this film a dark comedy. They really tried to make it comedic. It just wasn't my kind of humor, so I wasn't really laughing at it. Mostly poking holes in the story. I do have to say though that the ending was absolutely amazing and worth the crap that I thought during this entire film. The ending is amazing. If you watch this film, just wait for the ending. It's very satisfying and worth it, I promise. That's it. That's all I have to say about these films. I would say of all the films this week, my favorite was definitely The Invisible Man. Very highly recommend that film to everybody. My least favorite, definitely Poltergeist 3. I would probably put that on the bottom of the list. Worst films I've ever seen. That's it for 7 movie reviews. So if you guys liked this movie review, or if you liked any of the movies, or you want me to go more into details about it, please leave that down in the comments down below, as well as leave me your recommendations on what horror movies you want me to watch and talk about. I will do that. We have all month long. If you guys like this video, or if you liked any of the films I talked about today, please give this video a big thumbs up. It would absolutely mean the world to me. And make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're not already and you want to see more content. Lots more Halloween and horror themed videos coming this entire month, so stay tuned for all of that. With that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Live life, always laugh, and enjoy the journey. Bye! Oh my gosh, it was so bad. Stay tuned for... Stay what?